Hi, everybody. It's Paul, and I'd like to talk to you about cymbals today and what I do to make my cymbal mixing a lot easier, a lot more effective to get the best possible sounds on cymbal overheads. And also, a big component of why I do it is to make mixing fast. The last thing I want to do is spend hours trying to figure out how I'm going to deal with the overheads, how I'm going to do my rides, because a lot of times I don't know what this new thing is. It's been going on for years, but people tend to record on a live acoustic drum kit, a real drum set. They end up miking their cymbals from the next county, and there's no crashes in the overheads, and everything sounds really weird. And to just blend them into a certain place where you have a nice picture of the drum kit, there's no cymbal crashes. And a lot of times they're messed up or distorted, or one's really shrill and spiky, the other one's really dull. So here's what I do to save a lot of time so that I don't have to deal with this in Mixdown and do laborious automation, which I will do anyway, but just to get the big picture fast. What I'll do is I'll take cymbals. A lot of times I'll get cymbal overheads on a stereo track, okay? I'm going to, after the phase alignment and all that stuff with the overall drum kit, I'm going to take that stereo track and split it into mono. Actually, I'll split it into mono before I do the phase, so it's a mono track, and I can adjust each side of the stereo overheads independently. Okay? So now I've got my cymbals left and right on two faders, right? Now I'm going to duplicate those tracks without the audio. I'm just going to duplicate it once or twice, depending on if there's a ride cymbal in it also and stuff like that. And I'm going to drag and cut out every cymbal crash from the main audio set of cymbal tracks. And I'm going to take those two tracks, highlight the cymbal crash for, let's say, 3 counts or 4 counts, and drag those down to their own set of tracks. Okay? What this does for me, it allows me to quickly balance, let's say, the overall non-crashes, blending into the kit, EQing it the way I want, and blending it so that it doesn't decimate the overall drum kit and adds the right amount of depth and vibe to the kit, okay? Because you don't want an isolated drum kit without any overheads or some kind of overall picture of the kit, okay? It also allows me to be able to address the cymbal crashes in a whole different way than I'm actually addressing the drum kit when the crashes are not happening. So let's say that the cymbals are really shrill. I can just bring out 4K a little bit. I can dip that down a few dB or a lot, probably 2 or 3 dB at 4K, general bell curve. I can saturate them. I can chisel out any sort of sizzly sort of digital sounding, zingy, annoying, non-analogy sounding overtones in the cymbal, okay? Because those just are not pleasing to the ear. So my cymbal crashes now can be brought up to the level I want, let's say 5 or 6 or 7 dB, sometimes, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 dB if I have to, depending on how far away the left and right drum overhead mics are on a drum kit, okay? That allows me to mix lightning speed, because a lot of the excitement and enthusiasm in a song, the energy in a rock track or something on a live kit comes from the downbeats and cymbal flurries, like a cymbal crash left, a cymbal crash right, okay? Also, the reason why it's important to have these stereo cymbal tracks split into 2 mono tracks is because a lot of times people are recording their stereo overheads, overhead mics with an XY pattern or some sort of a Blumlein sort of, crisscrossed mics on top of the kit. And it's really hard to get a left and right cymbal crash image in the stereo mix. And I don't want to hear my cymbal crashes just mainly imaging in the center of the stereo field. I want to hear on a drummer, I want to feel the cymbal come from the left side if he crashes left. I want to hear it come from the right side if he goes for that. So with 2 different faders, I can just push up the one fader, so you're mainly going to hear it come from that side. All right. So if he goes chum chum, I can just go tum and just do what I have to do to make the cymbals sound more stereo, individually, a left-right cymbal, instead of just this nice stereo blur or wash in the center. To me, that doesn't sound exciting. Okay. Plus, the way I'm going to EQ the overall leakage part of the stereo overheads is probably going to be a little different than the cymbal crashes. Okay. The reason why it's so important for me to mix fast is because I found that the faster you mix, the more perception you have to know whether your mix is right or wrong. You don't want to get used to anything. That's why when you're excited, things are fresh, you're feeling a song for the first time, and you want to quickly push up faders and get things hammering and pounding and jumping and exciting, and get your bus compressor going, get the EQ going. I don't want to be worried about, is the excitement not happening because the guitar EQ is not right, or the piano is not having the right transient. There's not enough 2K in the piano to give it presence and that nice, beautiful, rich tone. Or is it that every time it hits a downbeat, it's kind of flat because I'm not hearing the cymbal crashes? Then I got to do the rides, and now I have a fixed amount of fader stuff, and I go later in the mix, man, if only the cymbal crashes, I would have gone up higher, but tamed the top end or the shrillness or chiseled them out a little more. That's why I like to stay liquid and fluid. It's the same reason why I use my multiple subgroups, which I covered in an earlier video, why I use that setup, because I want to be able to make any change I want, either dramatic or the smallest, littlest nuance instantly. I don't want to have to go through the pain of automating. It's why I only automate plugins when I have to. I'd rather have stuff split off so that I can quickly, and I mean quickly, do anything I want, okay? And on the cymbals, I can EQ them differently. I can also, if cymbal mics are too far up and there's no crashes, well, once I get the crashes the way they are, I'm going to end up getting too much snare drum. So now just on the cymbal tracks, I can use stuff like some sort of a transient designer focused on the anywhere from 800 to 1K, right in that range, and have it just dip down anytime the snare hits 6, 7, 8 dB, so that those loud crashes aren't going to destroy my main snare drum sound that I'm going to have from either a mono overhead or a front of kit overhead or underheads I tend to use a lot. Okay. Also for ride cymbals, people end up all these tracks and people have all this ride time. Let's say in the middle eight, it's really a ferocious middle eight, and the drummer's hitting their ride cymbal, and I can't hear it. And even when I push up the faders on the overheads, there's no definition. There's no point of origin. Okay, same thing with hi-hats. Some people say, well, I don't need a hi-hat mic. Well, you don't really know that, and you probably do, because for me, I like at the very least, a point of origin in sound. And plus, the hi-hat is such an important driving force that gives a song forward momentum and feel and bounce and pocket and all that great stuff. So I will often use either a Sony Involution transient designer and dip the 1K area, or I'll use the tilt feature on that. And let's say everything from 1.5K all the way down to the bottom end on a tilt, that whole thing will just dip every time the snare hits. So it's not going to ruin my snare sound and the drum kit sound. Meanwhile, when the kit is playing, I can have the leakage or the overhead sound that doesn't have the crashes blended in perfectly with different EQ. I may want to boost the bottom end. A lot of people roll off all this bottom end on the overhead mics just to get out of the way of the kick drum and all this stuff. Well, sometimes that can be a really beautiful sound in a drum set, in a drum sound. So I can distort it. I can EQ it differently. I can do whatever I want to do because they're separated. I can saturate. I can do all of it. I can send just the crashes, let's say, to parallel compression or vice versa. A lot of times I'll just send the leakage part of the overheads to the parallel compression. And I tend to not, even when if I happen to use a stereo drum subgroup, I tend to not put the cymbals in there because to me, cymbals are a completely different sound from the actual drums themselves. Same thing with S's on a vocal. It has nothing to do with the tonal part of a vocal and the S's of a vocal. Okay? But I can cover that in some other video. But that's what I do when I'm mixing. And also, just so you know, when I'm cutting out those crashes, let's say a tempo is 1, 2, 3, dun, 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 crash, 2, 3, cut on the next snare drum, which will be beat 3. Okay? Sometimes if it's a faster song, or sometimes I'll go all the way to the next bar. Okay? So those faders are here. The overhead non-crash information is down, let's say 5, 8 dB, whatever. Now I can do whatever I want with those two. But at the end of it, if it's not a seamless transition because it's a hard cut, remember, I'm not going to take the time to do the rides. I may taper the end of those crashes to come back down to the level that the overhead leakage kit tracks are at, and just 2, 3, 4. And now it's down to the tempo or the volume that meets the overhead kit tracks. Get it? I think that's it. I just wanted to share that tip. It helps me a lot. It saves me a lot of time. And even if I were to say that the crashes actually were in fact recorded great, and it's the right amount of crashes to overall image of the drum kit through the left and right overhead mics, I can still keep them the same volume on the faders, but I can still use different audio processing on those two tracks. I can just EQ this crashes a little different. I can EQ the overhead image a little bit different, or have different panning, or have different saturation, have different transients, or I can put an AE600 McDSB and have it dip everything 1K and below on the snare hits. I can still have total control. So hope that helps. Hope that makes your cymbal sounds more effective, greater, more control over the crashes, and mix much faster. Thanks for being here. If this video resonates with you, please consider subscribing, hit the like button, and until the next time, cheers, everybody.